Marvel movies seem unstoppable. Avengers Endgame is just the latest film breaking records and impressing people all over the world. Well, everywhere except Japan. While Marvel has definitely had some success in Japan, the movies make far well below box office expectations, especially when compared to other international countries. But what went wrong? Why doesn't Japan love Iron Man 3000? Or even 300? Well, we have some answers for you. And thanks to crafty work from Marvel, they may be seeing plenty of box office numbers rising up in the near future. So let's take an adventure over to Japan and dive into one of Marvel's hardest box offices to find success at. For 11 years, the MCU has risen up and dominated the international box office. Each year only seemed to get better and better for the franchise, culminating in huge event films like the Avengers, Captain America Civil War, and the Avengers Infinity War. And now, if there's one movie that will forever define 2019, it will be Avengers Endgame. The film was a landmark moment for millions and millions of fans all over the world. Weeks after release, people were still flocking to theaters in nearly every country, except Japan. The movie performed better than every other MCU movie at the Japanese box office, but was nothing Marvel will brag about in advertisements anytime soon. For years, American superhero films have struggled at the box office, especially Marvel ones. Focusing specifically on the MCU, let's venture back to 2009 with the debut of Iron Man. At the end of the year, Iron Man finished at 57th in the Japanese box office with just a little over $8 million in box office receipts. The Incredible Hulk was even worse, finishing at 131st and making less than $2 million at the box office. For comparison, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull finished 4th in 2008 with $53 million, while WALL-E made $44 million. Iron Man was also bested by other films like Cloverfield, Kung Fu Panda, and M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening. This makes us all wonder what exactly is happening over in Japan.
Cheese and crackers.
Iron Man 2 did slightly better in 2010, making nearly $13 million, but failing to crack the top 40 releases of the year. Compare that to some massive Disney hits from that year, as Alice in Wonderland ended up number 1 at the box office, drawing $133 million, while Toy Story 3 earned $126 million. And as the MCU continued to roll out movies, they barely made a splash in Japan. The first 2 Thor movies couldn't make more than $7 million. The first 2 Captain America movies did even worse. And up until the release of Endgame, the only MCU film to crack the top 10 of the yearly box office was the original Avengers back in 2012. So what's going on here?
Hey, you want me to throw some figures and percentages at you so we both feel better? Please? Alright.
The movies clearly have mass appeal to all types of international audiences, but something is clearly getting lost in translation. And it's not just because it's an American film either. The annual top 10 is full of American releases, including other action hits like sequels from both Mission Impossible and Fast and the Furious franchises.
This should be interesting.
Disney movies continue to overperform at the box office, and epic adventures like Jurassic World and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom do great as well. When breaking down some of the top movies in Japan and their entertainment culture, one thing is clear. The whole country is in a constant state of Peter Pan syndrome. Simply put, they don't want to grow up and want their movies to latch onto the innocence, excitement, and journey of childhood.
This better have been worth it.
This theme is presented in several of the anime hits that continue to get released year after year. While anime may be a subculture in the United States, it's completely mainstream in Japan, and it shows with just the box office numbers alone. Franchises like Pokemon and Detective Conan continue to dominate the box office, along with television hits like Dragon Ball and Gundam. Besides anime, what's the main connection between them all? The main protagonists are children or teenagers. Japanese audiences are drawn to the younger characters and the fantastical journey they go on in these movies. The themes have been woven into the culture and can be seen in some of the more popular American imports like My Neighbor Totoro. The 1988 anime film was a big hit in the United States, a huge hit in Japan, and still has a massive following today. The main characters are 2 young girls, very similar to other hit Japanese movies like Spirited Away, which follows the adventures of a 10-year-old girl. So when compared to Marvel movies, the Japanese audiences are not as drawn to the older and mature heroes like Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. The narrative arc presented in these stories is not as compelling to them as a younger character would be. So when you look at hits in Japan like Jurassic World, Coco, the live-action Beauty and the Beast, and the Harry Potter series, each movie features younger characters as the main focus. And this is where one of the biggest Marvel exceptions comes in. Yep, we're talking about the teenage web-slinger himself, Spider-Man.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude.
The angst, wonder, and journey of a young teenage boy dealing with complicated issues is a perfect fit for the narrative world that is so popular in Japan, and the box office numbers show it. Spider-Man movies have consistently performed well in Japan, starting with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man back in 2002. The film finished in the top 10 at the box office, making $56 million during its impressive run. Compare that to X2 X-Men United, which only made a little over $15 million 1 year later. Spider-Man 2 topped the original in 2004, making almost $60 million, and Spider-Man 3 was around the same with a total box office haul of $58 million. Yeah, Spider-Man 3 and his dancing self is likely to defeat Avengers Endgame when all is said and done in Japan. All three movies landed in the top 10 movies of the year, when barely any other superhero films could break the top 20. The story clearly resonates with viewers, and the success continued as Andrew Garfield took on the role for the Amazing Spider-Man films. When the role of Spider-Man went to an even younger Tom Holland, the success continued. While none of the films were able to match the high performance of Sam Raimi's trilogy, they still managed to outperform a wide range of other superhero films besides standouts like The Dark Knight and The Avengers. But the success of the Avengers in Japan may have just been a fluke. Avengers Age of Ultron made a little over half of the original's box office haul, showcasing how quickly audiences lost faith in our Marvel heroes. The power of the younger hero in Spider-Man even shows in movies where he's not the main character. Movies like Captain America Civil War, The Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame all featured Spider-Man, and their box office numbers were higher than normal for Marvel movies. The youth connection in Spider-Man isn't just a fluke either. It's not about Japan's infatuation with the hero. Take a look at Iron Man 3. The Marvel movie was one of the first to feature a young boy as one of the main characters and allies to Tony Stark. He actually had a character arc and provided some heroic moments. Thanks to the advertising focused on Harley Keener, audiences were drawn more to the story, giving it a box office draw of over $25 million. But youth isn't everything. History is important as well.
That came out of nowhere.
The world of Marvel is ingrained in American culture. Multiple generations grew up with Marvel comics, passed them down to their children, and then everyone shared in the cinematic experience together. The same storied history of Marvel is not as present in Japanese culture. Moviegoers are experiencing these origin stories as almost brand new characters as opposed to something that has been a part of pop culture. So it may take a few movies to catch on or rely on a giant blockbuster experience like The Avengers to entice audiences. The storytelling and characters from anime like Detective Conan have been an institution in Japan. The Detective Conan character has been around since 1994 through various cartoons. Space Battleship Yamato premiered in the 70s, and Dragon Ball has been around since the 1980s. As the shows and characters continue to grow, so does the fan base and demand to see more feature-length movies based on these properties. Comparing popular Japanese movies and storytelling comes with a lot of differences as well. In Marvel films, a common theme of good versus evil is presented. Over the years, Marvel has had many villains who are known for being evil just for the sake of being evil. In Japanese movies, the lines between hero and villain are not as well defined. There's a lot of gray area with these characters, and they're constantly going against a moral conflict. This may be one of the reasons franchises like Fast and the Furious and Pirates of the Caribbean are so successful in Japan. True fact, the fifth Pirates movie, Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales, has grossed more in Japan than Avengers Endgame. Besides the great visuals and action, the so-called heroes of the story are not so clean-cut. Vin Diesel's Dom has broken the law numerous times, treaded on the line of helping with law enforcement, and even turned to the bad side for a bit in Fate of the Furious. And then there's Jack Sparrow, who is constantly on the run, often selfish, and a far cry from a typical hero like Captain America.
I could do this all day.
The plot structure of traditional American films and Marvel movies is far different than what Japanese audiences are used to as well. Along with external struggles, Japanese movies tend to focus on internal struggles and character growth. The narrative may often be broken with flashbacks, internal monologues, or fantasy sequences. And while this obviously does not apply to every movie, it's a big factor that comes into play. And one of the reasons Endgame is one of the most successful movies Marvel has released in Japan. Not only were audiences treated to a massive cast of heroes, but the film touched upon several other dynamics we talked about. Younger characters like Spider-Man made an appearance. Tony Stark's journey involved a lot of internal struggles. And after Infinity War, people knew Thanos was much more than just a one-note villain. He had depth, conflicting views, and some reasoning behind his evil actions. The movie has made over $50 million at the box office and looks to join the original Avengers as just the second MCU movie to make it as one of the top 10 grossing movies of the year. The future also looks bright for Marvel films and their success in Japan. While the country obviously isn't their main market, there are a lot of natural elements coming into play. Spider-Man Far From Home follows up on the events of Endgame and focuses more on young adventures of Peter Parker along with his high school classmates. And Endgame helped set up plenty of future adventures for more of the younger heroes. Cassie Lang aged 5 years, and the teen is primed and ready for some Ant-Man adventures with her dad. Iron Man 3's Harley Keener made a big return and could take up the mantle as the new Iron Man. Even Hawkeye's daughter could get into the mix with some sharpshooting of her own. They may all even team up for a young Avengers movie that would have massive appeal in the country.
Yes!
Yes, Marvel movies are exceptional and extremely popular, but they cannot win everyone over. Marvel isn't the only victim of this either. Films like Wonder Woman and Justice League didn't perform so well upon release. The whole American superhero genre just isn't as appealing to the country. But Endgame has showcased there's a little hope for the future, and Marvel will naturally have to evolve their storytelling as more movies get released.
Do you hear yourself when you talk?
Well, thanks for watching. So what do you think of Marvel movies and their international performance? Should Marvel cater to different types of storytelling? Are there any other reasons we missed? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to ScreenRant for more great content.